So, Doug, good morning to you, and we look forward to hear from you.
Okay, well, thank you, David and Dave. Just pretend I jumped out of a cake, and here I am. But I wish I could be there. NCS has been a very important part of my spiritual growth and journey, and a little more on that later. But if Paul Mahalski asks you to do something and he smiles at you and kind of bats those eyes at you, you have to say yes. Now, I can't hear the background. I don't know if anyone's laughing at that. I hope so. But anyway, I really admire the NCS leadership. I'm thinking of Rocky on there, Terry Loughran at the end of the table, Peter Martin, Peter Hawkins, so many people over so many years. And more on NCS, how it's impacted my life there. And golf, I've got plenty of stories, but I'll save them for later, I guess. A little bit on my background. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, some of the challenges in my life, and some thoughts for the future for everyone. And hopefully that's meaningful or helpful. And I also would like to welcome Mason to Darien. NCS is an incredible organization. I'm sure you're an incredible person to take over the leadership here. But I've known a number of the leaders over the years, the last 25 years there. So my background, I grew up in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. I went to the Grosse Pointe Episcopal Church, and my great-grandparents gave part of the church in the early 1900s. My dad was head of stewardship for a few years, and I went to nursery school and also was confirmed there. So it was an important part. And my grandmother, we'd go to my grandparents' house on Sundays, and frequently the Reverend Maynard would come and be at our luncheon. So I guess I had a good foundation. My grandmother gave me a wonderful Bible when I turned 16, inscribed for me there. But I look back when I was 14, I went away to boarding school at Hotchkiss in Northwest Connecticut. I was looking for something bigger, better, different. And we had chapel 6 days a week. We had school announcements, and I think that was a lot of chapel. So I kind of drifted away there. But the first, and I do need a little water here, excuse me. The first major event in my life probably was when I was 14, I broke my back and really spent a couple months in the summer on my back. I went to dozens of doctors to try and find cure. The back was a black box, and I really was limited in what I could do and when I could do things. And so I think it taught me, I think of Peter 5, it helped create humbleness in me, I think, and an empathy for people who had limitations. And I really value the fact that I had limitations early in my life, because a lot of people when teenagers certainly didn't there. So how did I get back in the spiritual saddle? Well, early career, I wrote a book with a professor at the University of New Hampshire on ocean law, and I consulted for the UN on the United Nations Conference on the law of the sea, and then later implementing the 200-mile fishing zone. I then started a weekly newspaper with a Harvard MBA, and then I took a leave of absence a couple years into that to get my MBA at Virginia at Darden, and then moved up to Connecticut, ready for a new life and a big corporate job there. At that time, we moved to Darien in 1980 and got quite involved in St. Luke's Episcopal Church. There, my wife Gwen taught Sunday school, and we attended different things, but we're quite involved off and on. But it really wasn't an active engagement, maybe the way I have been recently in the last 20 years there. My kids got very involved. I have two kids, Colin and Caroline. Caroline lives in Australia. She comes back every 3 months to visit for 3 or 4 weeks. She works for Accenture. It's an incredible gift. And Colin is in Virginia, but he did live in the Middle East and Beirut, and I'm on Jordan for 3 years, and he comes up to help out because I need muscle. I need muscle to get up and down. And I have muscle. I have full-time muscle. I'll talk about that later. Caregivers that have been absolutely wonderful there. But both of my kids got involved in Bible study groups, and they switched to the youth programs at Road Presbyterian Church, which were very robust at the time. And I was meeting back to back with a couple of talented entrepreneurs, and they were involved in a Bible study group. And I said, well, I have to learn more about this. My teenage kids are involved. They're doing retreats in the summer. And so I went to a group in Greenwich that was hosted at Rick Scott's office. This is probably 25 years ago, maybe longer. And Rick was, I don't remember him coming very often, and he later became governor of Florida and the senator now there. But we had wonderful speakers. Eric Idle was involved, and that's where I met David Mays. And David Mays, I look up to him. He was my spiritual father on earth, I guess you'd say. He's been an incredible inspiration to me there. And when we started, John Bassler and I started our Bible study group, our first recruit was David Mays. And I'll tell you, for a guy who's in his 80s, he hits a pretty good golf ball right down the middle. So I'm very impressed with that. And now he plays with his grandsons, and I think he could still beat them. He'd have to fill you in on that there. But it was just so inspiring to be part of a Bible study group with dynamic ideas. And that's really what led me to NCS. So people at this Bible study group said, well, do you know New Canaan Society? And I said, well, no, I'd like to learn more. And I was kind of between churches because the kids were at Road Presbyterian. We weren't as involved in St. Luke's, even though it's a terrific church and the leader had changed and there were a little different style there. And I said, well, I need to learn more about this. So I said, okay, I'm going to go up to Jim Lane, who started NCS. So this was a Friday morning in February. It was about 15 degrees. It's in North New Canaan. And I walk on the way up to the house, I meet someone from New Hampshire and then someone from New York City. And I walk in, and Ralph Reed is speaking to 125 people at Jim Lane's house. I said, I don't believe this. This is New Canaan, Connecticut, there. And, NCS has just been so inspiring for me over the years. I have been to retreats. I know one time, not too many years ago, Paul Young was speaking, who wrote The Shack. I was so inspired by his talk that I changed my whole plan and did the weekend retreat up in Massachusetts for the regional NCS meeting. I've been to the national meetings with Rick Warren and Tim Keller, who wrote The Reason for God, and went to Bucknell, where my daughter did. It's just incredibly inspiring programs, and I value that. Next. In fact, NCS really became my spiritual center for quite a few years there. I would go to breakfast at NCS. We eventually moved to different locations in Stanford and eventually to 1020. And heard the head of Disney who wanted to build 1,000 churches. Heard Oz Guinness, who wrote the Prayer of Jabez. So many incredible leaders. And we eventually switched churches to the Road Presbyterian. It just made more sense. And I got involved in the mission team there. And that was inspiring. And that was really, along with David Mays, I said, I've been a CEO coach for 35 years now, and I help people start and grow businesses. And I speak Spanish. I studied in Spain. And I said, well, I'd love to learn more about entrepreneurship in Ecuador and go down and use my Spanish to keep it current. And I had to, because I went down there. We worked in conjunction with World Vision. Yeah. Apologies, my voice is a little weaker than it used to be. But I'd get thrown in a car with someone from Ecuador who didn't speak any English, and we're driving an hour to see clients. And so I had to use my Spanish, and it was wonderful. It really forced me to keep up to date. And the power of the programs and the speakers down there, the lives we were changing. I took both my kids on micro lending trips. I took my daughter to Ecuador when she was 17. And I don't know how many of you have had this experience where your teenage daughter doesn't want to talk to you or doesn't want to hang out with you there. And so we were kind of not, I was kind of out to pasture, I guess, with Caroline. And I just threw it out there. I said, hey, would you like to go down to Ecuador and on this micro lending trip? It's the 5th anniversary of our work down there, and there are a bunch of people going, a bunch of adults. And she said, sure. And we spent 5-6 days. We went and visited clients. I remember we went to visit Luis, who made roof tiles out of the volcanic mud, and he knew exactly what his market price was. He knew what his breakage was. He had no taxes. He had no paperwork, and he had to go in once a month and pay his loan. But it changed lives. And I took my son Colin to El Salvador. And that was quite different. We traveled around with the police because the Mara gangs were quite prominent, and they were impacting certain areas where we made some loans. But it just, microlending, I think, is the equivalent of what the law of the sea was when I was working on those issues in the 70s. It's the biggest change agent in the world. It can change lives. Give someone a cell phone. Give someone a $500 or $1,000 loan, and they can change so many lives. And I remember going with David Mace and my son, and we walked into this little bookstore, and there had been a major dam breakage in El Salvador. This is kind of in the southern part of the country, and we've been driving an hour and a half over pretty beat up roads. It's very exciting. And we walk in, and he's selling roll of toilet paper, a toothbrush, simple items. And he had 3 pictures up on the wall behind him. He had Queen Elizabeth, he had Marilyn Monroe, and he had this other elegant 16-year-old woman who I couldn't imagine who it was. So I said to Pepe, ¿Quién es Lorena? Who's the queen, or how do you know the queen? And he said, oh, yeah, I saw the movie. The movie had just come out, and it was wonderful. And who's that one in the middle? Oh, Marilyn Monroe. She's the best, my favorite actress of all time. And I said, well, who's the third woman over there? She looks incredible as well. Well, that's my mother when she was 16. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And you would meet clients who now had, improved their home, or now had a bakery, or made flowers, or now had sewing machines to sew. A lot of the clients did not have electricity, and they would treat us like king and queen when we came to visit. It was just amazing. They would give us juice, and many times there were animals running around. So it really grounded me in the poorest of the poor being grateful and spiritually strong. And many times they would have pictures of their kids who were now studying accounting or law or going to the university, and their next generation lives were going to be totally changed. So micro lending, I think, is incredible. And NPC has about 20 missions around the world. They've supported schools and medical clinics in Kenya and Tanzania for 20 plus years. Projects in West Virginia and Maine, local Baptist church in Norwalk, and so many projects. So I was involved for about 10 years with the mission team and involved with that. In fact, when we rebuilt the church, or added to the church, we did a big fundraiser, and 10% of the capital raise went to missions, which was about $1.4 million, I think it was in total. So we support a lot of projects there. The other aspect about executive coaching, which has been very rewarding and powerful for me, has been that many of these clients I get to know so well because I'm helping them with executive decisions, with team building, with cross training, with challenging coaching projects for their leaders, and just helping them get to the next stage. So I get to know them so well that they, I tended to attract spiritually strong people, or people who had a strong faith element to them. And I actually have worked with a number of churches as clients, including Trinity and Canaan Congregational and Yale Divinity a little bit. And it's been very rewarding. In fact, this whole model of having an executive director run the church and the lead pastor really focused on the outreach and preaching and that whole element has been adopted by a number of churches, but started really at Trinity. There, I've worked with musical leaders too, who provide music for services, and it's been very fun and rewarding and challenging. So I greatly value that there. And I look back, I've done a lot of speaking. I wrote a couple books on reinventing your business, your career, and been the national speakers. And it'd be great if I could be there, because it's hard for me to be there. One, because I'm sitting and I get tired with a lot of crowds, and of course I can't stand up to project now anymore. But there were some challenges along the way too. In the early 1990s, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I think of Romans 8:28. It really brought our family together. I have two brothers, one in Michigan, one in California, and we really provided a very good support system for Dad as he went through this over 7 or 8 years, and incredibly powerful in many ways. It made us so aware of limitations or changes there. So grateful for that. And so Dad died in 2000, and that was, obviously losing your father. I remember going on a retreat where I think it was an NCS retreat, or maybe it was our small group, not our small group, where, the imagery of your father as God was very powerful. And it was the right timing for me to really accept that and instill that in me. And I'm still trying to do that and learn from that there. But even more powerful that year was my best friend growing up in Michigan was an emergency room doctor. And I would go out to visit Michigan every couple times a year, and I'd call Bill and he wasn't available. And I started to get angry. I would many times see his wife and see his kids, my goddaughter, we were mutual godparents. And after 5 or 6 years of trying this, I said, well, I don't understand this. Why can't you make time to see me? We won tennis tournaments, we traveled all over, we played baseball, had overnights, endless overnights, and it was wonderful. Well, it turned out over a weekend, Bill went to a hotel room and committed suicide. And it was just devastating. I was so distraught. And somehow I went out to Michigan, presided over an open casket, and spiritually, helped, became an angel, according to Cindy, his wife, for his 2 daughters and for his wife and the family. And I don't know where that came from. I was so frustrated, but I forgave. I learned to forgive. And it was a very inspiring growth opportunity for me there. So I just think back on that, and you do see periodic focuses on suicide. It's incredibly interruptive for people and just very difficult. So 18 years ago, and I should mention that a lot of my small group is there. John Bassler and I think John's up in Vermont, but he's online now, started the small group. And we have all the churches involved. We have a power team, Al Briganti and Frank Kemp from St. Luke's. We have Phil Meyer and Gary Holmes from Darien Congregational. We have Jed Lawrence from NPC, and David Mace was our first recruit, as I said. And Dave Malooth was an early recruit too. And Dave has added some wonderful experiences and done many projects in Gaza and the Middle East and Lebanon, and has added so much and a Catholic perspective there. So we greatly value that. And as an aside, I didn't really teach Maloof how to play golf, but I did give him a few tips. But the last time we played with John Starks, right behind us. And Starks, I guess he smoked about 8 cigars. I was glad I wasn't playing with him in 18 holes, but Luke's come a long way with his golf game, and he hits them long and straight. And I'm very impressed with how he's taken up the game and improved over the years there. And you've seen over the years, David Mays has spoken on microlending and our work with World Vision in not only Ecuador and Chile and El Salvador and Dominican Republic, but also in Senegal, with teams that we would visit every year, and we would give them gift capital, and we would celebrate opening new offices, and you'd buy them computers and motorcycles and a year's rent and some capital for early loans. And it just changed lives tremendously there. So I've been blessed with an incredible small group. A lot of them come to visit. And I have this strategy, actually. I reach out to clients and friends. I'd say, well, why don't you come for lunch or tea, but bring lunch for me and bring lunch for my caregiver. So I get a lot of free lunches out of it. And we sit and we talk for an hour and a half, and it's uninterrupted. And it's absolutely wonderful. So I try to schedule someone every day, sometimes a couple people a day. And it's greatly valued by me because I don't get out too often now. But and I've had incredible support from friends. All the small group have been wonderful. They come here to my house and individually as well. I've been an entrepreneur in residence the last 5 years in Stanford, as well as the success coach. And many of the young entrepreneurs I've worked with come and visit, and we give updates, or we do phone calls or Zoom calls to help grow their business and raise capital there. I have been blessed greatly with, my wife Gwen has been absolutely phenomenal supporting me. The caregivers, I have full-time caregivers now, and you just learn so much as you take on new experiences. I remember when my daughter-in-law went to Brandeis and got a master's in international social justice, and Colin and Tara moved to Beirut when she was working with refugees in 4 countries. This is with Mercy Corps, and this is quite a while ago, but they had an incredible experience. We went to visit them in Amman, Jordan, got reconnected with the Middle East and Turkey and Morocco and Jordan. And you just learn so much and grow so much. And with my caregivers, same thing. I've had caregivers from Georgia, Tbilisi, Sophia, it was wonderful. She was a bodybuilder. Came to the U.S. in a competition. It was wonderful. Then I had Irina, who's from North Ossetia and Russia, and independent area. She was wonderful, and we'd have them cook meals for us and interact and learn about their culture. And most recently, we had Ivan, who was a professional soccer player in Namibia and South Africa, and also in Atlanta. And now I have Ozzy, who was a pilot in Namibia, and we've learned so much about their countries and their culture. And fortunately, we've been to that part of the world. We've been to Botswana and South Africa for a trip. My daughter was studying animal behavior, and we went to a preserve in Botswana, which was absolutely wonderful there. I have 4 grandchildren, 2 in Australia and 2 in Virginia now, and they're absolutely wonderful and supportive. In fact, when they were here this summer, I need kind of 2 muscles. I'm about 170 pounds now. I probably was a 220 and a 225 at one point, so I've lost a little weight. I'm like a sack of potatoes now to pick up, but we have a machine to help with that, right, Oz? Yeah. And it does help a lot. But I actually went swimming in a waterproof wheelchair. I had to switch from one wheelchair to another. But the kids were absolutely wonderful. They'd swim over me and hug me, and it was just great to be in the water this summer. But to tell the ALS story, 3 years ago, plus in the summer, I was swimming a couple miles in the lake in Rhode Island. I have a good friend who lives on a lake, and I love to swim in lakes. That's my favorite thing. You know, I do breaststroke, freestyle, and underwater. And so I was back here. We moved. We had spent 35 years in Darien, but we moved to Stanford about 7 years ago, and we joined the Italian Center. And so I was swimming laps over there, and I couldn't get my left arm out of the water to complete the freestyle. I said, "What's this all about?" So obviously, I went through testing. Yale diagnosed me about 3 years ago in September, and then Columbia in February, a couple of years ago, of having ALS. And you know, there's a very supportive community out there, so I appreciate that. They're nonprofits. We've done walks. There is a walk if anyone's interested. It's October 19th at Sherwood Island, probably 10 o'clock in the morning for ALS. The ALS, the Ice Bucket Challenge, of course, was a huge fundraiser for raising awareness of ALS, but it's a very rare disease, and there aren't really too many solutions at this point. There's work going on, but it's difficult there. But it's been incredibly rewarding. It's made me a lot more spiritual. I, you know, have a routine where I would do breathing exercises, hand exercises, bed exercises, and now I can't use my arms or my legs, but I have such support that it really hasn't impacted me that much. And so many friends have been great about supporting me and reaching out and visiting. In fact, we have 5 or 6 couples from Rhode Island that will drive down and have a meal with us and drive back, and that's a 2-hour plus road drive. Other friends from Hartford and Northwest Connecticut and New York City that come out. So we're greatly blessed with all that. And so I think you know, Paul said, well, share what you think going forward. I think you kind of three things which have been tips that I think are important maybe going forward. Be eternally grateful and forgive. Forgive whoever you've disputes with, or family, friends, whoever. It's incredibly powerful, and you know, do we talk enough about forgiveness? I don't know. Certainly, the ALS kind of reminded me of Proverbs 3:5. You know, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him; He will make straight your paths. And also, Philippians, do not be anxious. Philippians 4:6-7, about anything, but in every situation, but prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. And I'm greatly thankful. I am not anxious about anything. My focus is on solving the next challenge, which may be how to do something I used to do before. So one of the things, hold up the book here, Ozzy. And here, maybe come behind me. So show your face. Ozzy is my wonderful caregiver. He's my muscle, I call him. He's very strong and very helpful. So I wrote a book. My kids gave me this app called Storyworth, and they send you questions every week. And I didn't pay attention for 6 months, but now I think an exercise like this or something like this, where, you know, what's your favorite prank? What did you learn from your parents? What's your definition of success? You know, I actually put in a couple questions on how my life is different now that I've had ALS for 18 months. I can't reach a light switch. I can't pull up my pants. I can't do all these things you take for granted there. So it's a really good exercise, I think, to capture your life in some way. And my daughter's been wonderful about putting in all the pictures. And I actually have a digital copy if anyone's interested in that. Let me know, or go through Paul. Glad to share that there. The second one the second one's write your life story. And I think that's important. You all have great experiences, and so yes, people or NCS brothers are all involved in incredible projects, whether it's building a church, helping with Pivot House, so many different projects. I always was inspired by the people I met. And it was a little frustrating because our small group would always meet on the same Fridays as NCS, so I missed many meetings, and now I can't do it as much. But it's incredible. And then the third thing I would say is find a cause that's important to you. I remember one of the most powerful speeches I heard was Bob Buford speaking to New Canaan Society, and he ran a leadership institute in Texas, and he wrote a book called From Success to Significance. And think about that. And I think that's a bottom line message for NCS is that we all have success in some measures, or maybe less success for others, but financial success, material success, sure, that's great, but is that really significant? I think it's much more significant to be involved with a cause where you're helping people, improving society, spreading the message of the kingdom. There's so many great things out there. So I am eternally grateful for that. And I welcome my team, Mitch Dickey, online. I see some other friends. I know a lot of you. I welcome if any of you want to reach out and stop by. I'm near the Sterling Farms golf course, so you can stop off and hit some golf balls before or after you visit. There, I even have a backyard. You can do a little chipping if you want. So we'll keep in the. I'm not using my golf clubs, so you can borrow them if you need it. So anyway, thank you all for listening, and I really admire the NCS leadership, Paul and his team, and thank him again for setting me up and putting the rap on me. But thanks so much.